We built it. Need something demolished.
2v2 on Moscow Outskirts. This game is going to be AbsoluteMachine and Showtime versus DontReallyCare and Neo. AbsoluteMachine and Showtime playing as double Soviets in the south. DontReallyCare and Neo playing as mixed Axis in the north. We've got shock rifle, guard motor, advanced warfare, shock rifle, counterattack versus Luftwaffe supply, Jaeger armor, spearhead. Damn it, I really wanted to do them all without checking. Spearhead, breakthrough, spec ops, and fortifications, which means that if there is a B4 constructed this game, it could get countered by various forms of Stuka dive bomb. And from Neo, we're probably going to see some form of heavy anti-tank in the form of the Jagdtiger or TAC-43. Or possibly the command tank. Either way, pretty broad set of options there. The game starts out with a Kuba wagon in the first engagement here on the left side with SWS support scouting, forcing an early retreat from the combat engineers on the left, and an MG-42 is making its way towards the cutoff to support in early engagements. Combat engineers and conscripts taking control of territories there on the right side while pioneers make their way towards the victory point. Conscripts also going to take control of the munitions while a penal battalion makes its way towards the center to engage in the middle. The Soviet player has gone tier 1 here, while his teammate has not chosen a tech structure yet. And after 2 squads of penal battalions, he will get himself an M3.
We have a new scout car at our disposal. Will this day never end?
Penal battalion takes up a position inside of the shed, and Stern pioneers are engaging from a position in green cover. Kuba wagon has moved up to support, and the M3 is going to make its way up the central road to try and push that Kuba wagon away. Meanwhile, the SWS is, I don't know why it's parked right there. It's just, I guess, providing vision. I don't know. Engagement continues over here on the right side. Pio's actually walked straight past that squad of conscripts to take control of the fuel point over here. The Kuba wagon has been pushed away by the M3, but the penal battalion inside of the shed is wiped as the building is completely destroyed just by small arms fire. Meanwhile, conscripts are trying to make their way across the right side to get some sort of flank done on that Kuba wagon, but it's sufficiently protected by grenadiers to make a push very difficult. The M3 will also get pushed away, not wanting to get too close to a potential Panzerfaust. The Volksgrenadiers take control of the victory point over here on the left side as well, and we will see a fresh squad of penal battalions fielded by Showtime to replace that early loss. Lots of conscripts clustered here towards the central church are trying to prevent an Axis counterattack, but they're getting suppressed by the Kuba wagon and taking a lot of pressure. They'll only be able to hold for so long. Engaging at range is making things difficult for them. Nice flank by this flamethrower squad. Gets 1 crit on this squad in green cover, but it looks like they're going to be wiped or forced to retreat. Conscripts move up to close range to try and force these grenadiers to reposition or retreat and get away and secure this position for the Allies for now. Penal battalion upgraded with a flamethrower forces Volksgrenadiers in green cover to move away, and the central victory point will fall to the Allies. Meanwhile, the left side is being harassed by a lone squad of combat engineers. The M3's taken light damage and will pull back for repairs. The penal battalion inside is being upgraded with a flamethrower now. flamethrower applying pressure from the left side is going to force that machine gun to retreat. If it doesn't leave the building soon, it will certainly get wiped. Pulling out now. Meanwhile, the M3 has taken light damage, but is going to re-engage. Lots of pressure being applied. Grenadiers are trying to stick around for a Panzerfaust. They do get it off, but the squad comes very close to getting wiped. They do make it away. Fortunately, there were no flame crits there. The Kubelwagen manages to suppress the remaining penal battalion as they try to get into this building. They will make it, however, and force this Kubel and Raketenwerfer to further retreat. Combat engineers that were harassing the left side have taken cover inside of this building, and a mine that they planted wipes out 3 of the 5 Volksgrenadiers in this squad, and they should be able to trade fuel for the victory point if they leave that structure. They're just sitting in there for now, though. Penal Battalion is shuffling between buildings to try to apply further pressure to the Kubelwagen and various supporting infantry here.
Support upgrade complete.
And a minesweeper has been purchased on this Sturm Pioneer squad, which will repair the Kubelwagen now.
Work completed.
Volksgrenadiers have finished taking the left side victory point, while combat engineers take control of the fuel. More Volksgrenadiers being fielded to the left side will push them away and get that fuel back under control for the Axis, while conscripts have left their defensive position by the church to take control of the right side territories and North Strategic Point. We will have commander selections now from everybody except for Showtime. AbsoluteMachine has gone with Shock Rifle, as we've seen him do in the past. DontReallyCare has chosen Luftwaffe Supply, and Neo has chosen Special Operations Doctrine. We actually haven't seen Luftwaffe Supply in a long time. I don't know why it's fallen out of favor, since it was really popular in the past. I think it's one of the many viable austere commanders in 2v2, and it's good to see it again after not seeing it for quite some time. Personally, maybe I just don't do enough 2v2s. I certainly never see it in 1v1. Medical supplies are being picked up by the Grenadiers here, and they will all be healed to full quite quickly. And we also have shock troops hitting the field as well.
Luftwaffe reports it can now paradrop medical supplies on your command.
We also have a sniper hitting the field from Showtime, making its way towards the center. Taking up position in green cover, and it will remain camouflaged until the Axis infantry advances. Grenadiers have pushed away the conscripts that were harassing the right side and threatened to wipe one of the squads on retreat. And there they go, and they will take control of the strategic and munitions points in the north before making their way towards the Allied cutoff, and potentially also their fuel. We will see further harassment of the victory point on the left side by another combat engineer squad, Volksgrenadiers making their way across the left side to get territories under control as well, meaning that most of the fighting will remain clustered here in the center, focusing purely on munitions over fuel for now, and of course also defending this cutoff point. We do have a machine gun available to defend, and a battle group headquarters established with a forward retreat point to allow the Axis to field a strong presence here on the cutoff and munitions points, and remaining rather weak here on the fuel. We're also going to see Tier 3 from AbsoluteMachine, who has purchased himself a T-70, is making his way across the right side with it. He should easily be able to force retreats from the various Axis infantry formations over here, utilizing that unit. And we've also got infiltration grenades being thrown into this building by Neo, who has chosen Spec Ops. So all 4 players have chosen their commander, and infiltration grenades will serve as an effective counter to building usage by the Allies. Almost wiping a squad when he plays his hand. T-70 goes in on a squad of pioneers on the right side and will easily force a retreat. I'm not aware of any teller mines in the retreat path, so it could easily dive as far as it needs to wipe that squad. And it looks like he's going to chase. Changed his mind. That was definitely a wipe squad if he had chased, but decides that it's more effectively used here in the center, trying to clean up various Axis infantry off the field and get it to retreat and get the munitions and victory points back under control. T-70 is moving to head off these Grenadiers as they retreat and should easily be able to wipe this one-man squad. All shots are being focused on the 4-man squad, unfortunately, and it looks like both of them are going to make it away unless he dives.
Our lines
of supply are disrupted.
Both Grenadier squads do survive the T-70's charge. It inflicts heavy damage on a Panzer Grenadier squad before they round the corner as well. The T-70 cannot chase into the base because OKW defenses are available rather than Oster defenses. In all 4 locations, for some reason. And a Tier 4 structure will be constructed here on the Axis cutoff, while Allied snipers make their way across the left side to pressure infantry into retreating. Nice Raketenwerfer placement destroys this T-70, and it will no longer be able to force retreats from Axis infantry, freeing them up to harass the right side once again. Conscripts are taking control of all territories here on the right side. We'll probably follow up the victory point next. An anti-tank gun has been fielded by the Oster and is making its way straight to the front lines, but a huge push by Allied infantry on the Tier 4 structure threatens to destroy it. Satchel charge being thrown, and that Tier 4 structure will be taken out. Most damage was inflicted on it while it was still under construction, and the Axis did not effectively screen it, and now that is an 80 fuel loss for no gain whatsoever. Nice play by the Allies to capitalize on that vulnerable placement. Kugelwagen getting rather brave. It has almost no HP. I almost think those snipers could have killed it just by shooting at it. Mine goes down here from combat engineers and are making their way across the right side to look for opportunities to either harass territory or possibly plant further mines or demo charges. Demo charge going down in the road. Conscripts and shock troops are making their way up towards the center as well. Standing in red cover, they will take heavy damage from these Grenadiers LMGs. They try to get into close range, but they cannot accomplish much and will be forced to retreat. Conscripts continue to stand in red cover and get wiped by a mortar. We're kind of asking for that though. And Grenadiers will move to retake control of the central victory point. Shock troops are making their way up the left side, forcing Volksgrenadiers to reposition as they take control of the munitions. And the map has been split horizontally for pretty much the entire game. Neither team really managing to break through and make anything happen on either the cutoff points or the victory or fuel points. Very even for territory so far. Very back and forth, but overall I would say that neither side has secured very much of an early advantage. Which means that the loss of that Tier 4 structure is that much more devastating, since they don't have any extra fuel with which to offset that.
Is in action. Standing by for setting of command post.
Sniper firing on Volksgrenadiers brings the squad down to 2 men before retreating. Penal battalions that are attempting to rush the Kugelwagen are not experiencing very much success. I'm not sure if the Soviets will have vision of this demo charge when an opportunity arises, but because of its placement on the road, retreating squads will take a very wide path away from it. Shock troops getting into close range on Grenadiers once again are taking huge damage on the approach. Without utilizing smoke grenades to close the gap or bringing more squads to bear, they stand no chance of engaging well and are forced to retreat quite early. Shock troops making a play on the right side to catch Panzer Grenadiers out of position, but they are not in the retreat path since the Panzer Grenadiers go left, and they will be able to get away safely. Harassment attempt by another squad of shock troops over here will make it rather dangerous for certain squads of infantry to engage, but these Grenadiers should be able to cut them down at long range as long as they remain grouped. Shock troop squad is also suppressed.
Access to KV-8 flamethrower tanks.
Yet another squad of shock troops is forced to retreat with only one man remaining because the Allies continue to spread their forces out so much. Every time they engage, a squad is brought down to only one man and then forced to retreat. We will see another attempt at a Tier 4 structure here, and it doesn't look like the Allies have any way of making a coordinated push against it, so this one should be able to construct unopposed. Much better timing by the Axis on this construction.
Enemy is alerted to our presence. Prepare for counter-strike. Incoming fire!
Meanwhile, an incendiary bombing run forces shock troops out of a capture circle while conscripts take control of the victory point on the right side. The Allies have gained a large victory point lead now, and as long as the Axis remains triple capped, it's only going to grow. It's going to be 100 points soon. The Axis is definitely going to have to do something about that. Moving these squads up into green cover like this allows them to continue to engage and stall the Allies' advance, but they really need to get territories captured before they do this. Plus, snipers have no problem flushing infantry out of cover regardless. However, the Tier 4 structure has been completed, and Showtime just picked counterattack tactics with 400 fuel in the bank, which is a bit of a questionable decision. Granted, I don't know if he knows that his opponent is Luftwaffe supply, but if he does have that knowledge, he needs to utilize that knowledge to know that a B4 is just going to get bombed. And he should know that. There was an incendiary bomb run up here. I don't know if he saw the medical supplies, but that's been happening. Of course, one of the biggest cells of Luftwaffe supply is the supply drop zone, and that hasn't been utilized at all because it's rather difficult to safely maintain a fuel point on this map and drop fuel onto it, and the munitions are both under Allied control right now. Grenadiers continue to engage shock troops very well, bringing the squads low and forcing them to retreat over and over again. AbsoluteMachine has 3 squads of shock troops that he's trying to manage in 3 different locations at a time, and by spreading himself out like this, and not really synergizing with his teammates' snipers, by the way, he is constantly herded back to his base before he can have a dramatic impact on his opponent's forces. But it does mean that their map control has been quite good. As we can see, the victory points are very much under Allied control, or at least have been for most of the game. Unfortunately, the manpower deficit that he's accumulating by engaging this poorly is starting to add up, and we can see the Axis slowly closing in and taking territories all over the map every single time the Allies are forced to retreat like this. Especially when his teammate is concentrating 1,000 manpower into snipers. If he doesn't even the manpower odds by inflicting massive losses with those, the Allies are really going to struggle this game, especially as things drag on. Of course, a B4 can be a mechanism by which a manpower deficit is evened. Since it's not that expensive, it can inflict massive casualties. The question is, how much damage will he be able to do with it before it gets destroyed by a stupid dive bomb? First squad of Obersoldaten just hit the field, and they're probably just going to keep coming. Second squad is in production now. And there's the very first fuel drop. It looks like he's going to recover it himself rather than feeding fuel to his teammate.
Contact! They have a flamethrower!
And having both fuel points in Axis control plus a fuel drop coming down means the Axis are going to rapidly have a lot of tanks at their disposal, which is good because the first IS-2 just hit the field from AbsoluteMachine. Meanwhile, Showtime has not fielded any of his doctrinal late-game units, but he does have the manpower to do so, and combat engineers in position, so I suspect we will be seeing a B4 very soon. The IS-2 is chasing these Oster squads straight into the base, and there's nothing to screen it away at right now. But a Panther is in production. So the IS-2 may bleed these Grenadier squads a little, but it will be pushed out of the Oster base by the Panther once it completes.
The enemy is taking our territory. The territory is out of contact.
IS-2 continues to engage in the base despite having a damaged engine, but it's not inflicting very many losses. Panther's about to complete. Panzerschreck and Raketenwerfer support is also arriving, and this IS-2 is in quite a bit of danger and needs to reposition to safety immediately. It has a lot of frontal armor and health, so it will probably be fine, but the Panther just arrived, and I'm not sure how this engagement's going to go. There isn't really any supporting infantry anywhere nearby. The nearest squad of conscripts is over here on the victory point, and this IS-2 having a damaged engine is a serious problem. Panther's shots are all penetrating despite engaging the IS-2 from the front. Panzer Shreks and Grenadier support continue to chase, and no support is on the way at all. And that is a senseless loss of that initial IS-2. Inflicted very minimal damage before being destroyed by DontReallyCare's Panther. Meanwhile, here in the center, though, a squad of Obersoldaten just got wiped by snipers because it was not being monitored during the course of this engagement. Although I think 2 of the snipers just died. Just to being fired upon by ogres with an LMG. Oh, and the Volksgrenadiers, 2 LMGs. Even though those snipers were positioned in green cover, they still died quite quickly. 2 of 3 snipers dying is a huge loss by Showtime. That was a bit of a careless mistake. B4 just fired somewhere. First shot is targeted at the Schwer Panzer headquarters, but because it's slightly off target, doesn't inflict all that much damage. Bit of a lull in the combat as the Soviets have taken heavy losses. IS-2 and 2 snipers both destroyed, and they're going to have to recuperate a little bit before making their next attack. They have excellent map control, having harassed the entire left side out of Axis hands. The right side and center are falling back into German territory. Now that a little bit of the pressure the Allies have been applying has been alleviated. Most of the major threats have been cleared out. What now remains is the B4 and KV-1. The Axis are floating quite a bit of resources on both of them. In fact, about 1,000 manpower between them, so they have a bit of wriggle room with which to replace things like this happening. B4 one-shots that Panther, which was already at about 2/3 health. And that nets Vet 1 for the B4. Grenade getting tossed over the wall inflicts minor damage on those Volksgrenadiers, but they'll be able to reinforce the damage easily enough. The squad is suppressed and will be forced to retreat soon, especially with Obersoldaten moving up to scare them off. And they're about to retreat through the entire Axis army, so I'm not entirely sure that squad's going to get away. KV-1 is moving up to put pressure on the Tier 4 structure itself and soak up damage from the flat gun while the shock troop squad attempts to retreat. And it looks like those shock troops will get away narrowly. Panzer Shreks are moving up to try and screen that KV-1 away, and it's fallen down to about 3/4 health. Now that the Panther has been destroyed, there's not much to deter it. The B4 shot is slightly off target, but does destroy a building with an MG42 inside. KV-1 pulling back to a more safe location. These penal battalions, despite being in green cover, are taking heavy damage from the Obersoldaten with STGs here, and they'll be forced to retreat with only a sliver of health remaining. But again, Allied map control remains supreme as they continue to spread their forces and take territory while the Axis cluster their units in engagements for the center, continuing to prioritize munitions very heavily. And by clumping their units like this, they did secure themselves an early advantage, but now that a B4 is on the field, they will have to adapt their playstyle a little bit to avoid taking massive losses from lucky B4 hits. Although the B4 does tank a grenade from some Volksgrenadiers here. Unfortunately, DontReallyCare does not currently have the munitions to utilize a stupid dive bomb. And the B4 will fire on the battle group headquarters now. Or no, on this thing again, bringing it down to just a tiny pixel of health remaining, and that Tier 4 structure will likely be destroyed by anything that chooses to attack it. Even a grenade from an infantry squad could destroy that structure at this point. Looks like that KV-1 is going to go finish the job, and I don't really see anything that's going to prevent except for one pack, which is angled a little bit, unfortunately. Actually, that KV-1 won't even be necessary. This IS-2 will be more than enough to finish the job. Meanwhile, shock troops are making their way up the left side to take control of the victory point, and they continue harassing the strategic point as well, and the Axis forces are getting thinner and thinner. Sturm Pioneer Squad gets wiped by that opening IS-2 shot because they are positioned in front of the structure instead of behind it. An AT gun and a Rakettenwerfer try to put pressure on the IS-2, but it's not nearly enough to stop the structure from being destroyed, and a B-4 just fired again and annihilates a Rakettenwerfer. Fortunately, this blob of Volksgrenadiers was not quite close enough to suffer the same fate. Shock troops making their way across the left side will try and force Sturm Pioneers off this fuel point. They're only at half health, but it looks like they will win the engagement. Sturm Pioneers will be forced to retreat over a demo charge. They're not that close to it though, they'll be fine. Showtime brings a recon pass over the center of the map, and now that the Tier 4 structure has been destroyed, it shouldn't get shot down unless the OKW base structure shoot it down. Which they did. But, apparently, an artillery flare from Neo, combined with the stupid dive bomb, will clear the B-4 off the field, finally, and Showtime will have to save up another 500 manpower to purchase himself a new one. Neo has finally saved himself enough fuel to field a command Panther. After losing 2 Tier 4 structures, his tanks have been heavily delayed, but he does manage to get one on the field. And he's sending it towards the center to help in an engagement against the KV-1 and IS-2. Coordinated fire goes out on the IS-2 to help these Panzerschrecks and Panther take it out, and it is reduced to about half health, with the supporting infantry are taking a lot of pressure from snipers and flamethrower here. They have to retreat immediately if they don't want to get wiped. Panther moves up to fire on the snipers, but its shots miss, and the snipers are camouflaged, but they retreat anyway. Panther is chasing and may be able to pick up the KV-1 here. As for the flanks of the map, they continue to be in primarily Allied hands, but we will see a pretty successful harassment attempt here by DontReallyCare, forcing many squads of conscripts to retreat. And he will finally get the right side victory point back in Axis hands. Panther is going rather deep to try and take out that damaged KV-1, but he didn't commit to a big push and will pull back to safety for now. Penal Battalion is applying some pressure here on the Axis cutoff, and looks like it might wipe a Volksgrenadier squad. And there they go. Wasn't monitoring that engagement while his command Panther was diving the Soviet base. Penal Battalion will move to steal an Axis AT gun before retreating. Since the Panther does not have a top mount machine gun, it does only minor damage to infantry for now. Does manage to clear the AT gun before it can get back behind the Allied lines. 2 snipers over here are applying pressure to Axis infantry and bait the Panther over a mine in the road, damaging its engine, and it will be forced to pull back for repairs. There is 1 squad of Sturm Pioneers remaining. Fortunately, it's nearby, and that Panther will be able to receive repairs if the Axis can screen away this freshly repaired IS-2. There is a pack available to apply pressure to it, and with the help of coordinated fire, the IS-2 is taking heavy damage, and a fresh Oster Panther has also just hit the field. And that IS-2 will be destroyed. It wanted to take out that Panther, but it just wasn't able to do so alone. It had woefully little support, whereas the Axis provided Panzerschrecks, an AT gun, and a fresh Panther. Nice play by the Axis to take out the threat of that IS-2. Can't believe this demo charge has not been detonated yet, which just goes to show that that placement probably isn't really very good. Should have put it more towards the corner. He's had a lot more opportunities in that location. Panther is receiving repairs from the Stern Pioneers now, while shock troops are retreating away from the right side, but conscripts have been fielded back to the right side to get some of that territory under control while these grenadiers were reinforcing. Still no fresh B4 constructed here in Showtime's base, but he will have the manpower to do so quite soon if he chooses to go that route instead of further tanks. If he does do so, DontReallyCare will be forced to drop another Stuka dive bomb when he gets the opportunity, but because the Allies have had such good munitions control, it's quite costly for them, and the question is whether or not that munitions investment is one that the Axis can afford over the manpower investment that the Allies have to make. It becomes a production war rather than a strategic war once both sides have access to a bomb run and the B4. If the Allies can secure enough munitions control with the power of the B4, they may be able to prevent the Axis from utilizing a stupid dive bomb entirely. It also falls to the Soviet player to float a lot of manpower on B4s, meaning that his infantry presence in the center of the map will be diminished as a result of relying on his teammate to win engagements, utilizing mostly artillery support. That SWS got way overextended. I think he was trying to set up a tier 4 structure in the center again, but with the stolen AT gun Neil's screening, it stood no chance and was quite easily cleared up, although it will provide a little bit of free fuel. Anti-tank gun gets cleared out by an anti-tank gun with sniper support, and these Folks Grenadiers will probably be forced to retreat if the snipers can shoot through them fast enough. There's just too many of them though, and this penal battalion looks like it's going to be forced to retreat before the Folks Grenadiers are, and the Soviets are cleared completely off the battlefield. The stolen AT gun will make its way back to safety just in time. Oversoldaten making their way to the front lines will make this a dangerous location for any Allied infantry, and the Command Panther has been fully repaired. Its Oster counterpart also making its way towards the center, and a fresh IS-2 has just rolled onto the field, and this one absolutely has to impact the field dramatically. If these two Panthers survive and that IS-2 gets destroyed, then the Allies may be brought into a situation that they cannot come back from. And Showtime continues to spend the majority of his manpower on reinforcing his infantry and producing new snipers, and if he doesn't produce a new B4, they won't have a really powerful indirect fire option to fire on these tanks. Shock troops closing in on this Folks Grenadier squad, dealing minor damage because they're Vet 5. And the shock troops will be forced to retreat soon. The IS-2 takes heavy damage from these two Panthers, but the AT gun will get cleared. An incendiary bomb run gets dropped on this squad of shock troops. Wow, that had a huge spread. It's kind of weird. Lands pretty well actually on the repairing combat engineers here and the shock troops on the front line. Combat engineers are all burning to death. They should probably not stand in the fire.
Infantry have made the ultimate sacrifice.
So much for those guys.
If we die, you die. They're taking lethal fire.
Squad of conscripts takes a wide path across the right side and will harass VPs again. VPs continue to be very much an Allied lead. Almost 200 points ahead of the Axis, which struggle to keep them under their control despite how well that they've been engaging. They just can't seem to maintain map control because the Allied harassment, mostly by AbsoluteMachine on both flanks of the map, has been so good. But it does mean that Showtime has been engaging largely alone in the center, and the engagements do not go in his favor. A fresh B4 is under construction now in the Allied base. Don't Really Care does not currently have the munitions to dive bomb that, and he will be forced to float for a while, several minutes in fact, with their not great munitions income. Panther moves up to engage this KV-1 and brings it quite low. Stolen anti-tank gun will rotate to fire on it, and the Panther misses its critical shot. The KV-1 will get to safety this time. Wow, the MG-34 on that Volksgrenadier squad just laser beams both of those sniper squads down so quickly, and they will not make it to safety of the Soviet base. B-4 takes his first shot at the Command Panther, but it's quite off target, and it will get to safety. Vet 4 Obersoldaten are able to suppress infantry now and easily win an engagement against shock troops for the left side, forcing them to retreat, and they should be able to get the left side victory point under control. Meanwhile, the shock troops that are harassing territory on the right will also be forced to retreat by Don't Really Care's Panther. A squad of Panzer Grenadiers has been deployed to the right side and wipes a squad of conscripts with a bundled grenade. They're all full of shrapnel and slowly dying, while the Panzer Grenadiers take control of the VP and strategic points here in the north. Incendiary artillery is being dropped on them to deter them from capturing this point, but it looks like they're not paying attention and could get wiped. Gets them out of the flames just in time and continues capturing the point. A second Panther has been deployed here by Don't Really Care. Now that he's beginning to mass tanks, the threat of Soviet IS-2s is significantly reduced, and it will be upon this B-4 to land beautiful shots on those tanks to turn the odds back in the Allies' favor. B-4 turns to fire on the Panthers now. They're holding dangerously still. B-4 firing. The shot connects very nicely on one of the Panthers, bringing it down to dangerously low health, and then IS-2 moves up to try to engage. Both Panthers are going to pull back to safety for repairs. Meanwhile, the Command Panther is still alive and is up to Vet 2. Has only 10 kills and has been upgraded now with the top-mount machine gun, but it cannot engage infantry as long as prioritized vehicles is active. Even the top-mount machine gun, in fact, will not fire on infantry while prioritized vehicles is active, which I think is kind of strange, but whatever. V4 still has not been destroyed, but the munitions is being collected quite quickly, and within the next minute he will have the 160 he needs for a Stuka dive bomb. Whether or not they can pressure the Axis into spending that munitions on something else will determine whether or not that V4 survives the coming engagements. Neo, for his part, does have the munitions for the artillery flare necessary to provide vision. Otherwise, Don't Really Care will have to save an additional 80 for a reconnaissance overflight. B-4 fires on the Command Panther, but the shot is slightly off target and it will survive. Despite the fact that the B-4 has not destroyed any priority targets, it has alleviated a lot of pressure in the form of forcing those tanks to pull back for repairs. And when they're repairing, they're even more vulnerable. Looks like more squads have been wiped over here. I see a bunch of dead shock troops next to some grenadiers. Or they were forced to retreat with only a single man remaining, and this right side VP will fall back into Axis hands once again. The Axis are about to fall to a little bit less than 100 VPs, and when that happens, they're going to have to start playing a little bit more carefully around the victory points.
The command vehicle has gone static.
Stuka dive bomb has been called in thanks to the combination of an artillery flare and the bomb strike itself, which means that another B-4 has been destroyed. Showtime is up to 450 manpower and can produce himself another B-4 if he wants to, but he's lost so many forces in the field that he doesn't really seem to be able to afford it right now. He's lost all of his snipers multiple times, and is currently operating on only 2 penal battalions, 1 sniper, and a stolen AT gun, which means that if he chooses to produce another B-4, he's not going to have very many ground forces with which to assist his teammate. That being said, AbsoluteMachine is currently up to 2 IS-2s, and the IS-2 is the heaviest tank that can possibly hit the field other than the King Tiger in this game, but Neo is nowhere near having the fuel for a King Tiger anywhere in the future, and although he's floating 1,000 manpower right now, his fuel income is only plus 14, which means that the Command Panther is the only tank he's going to have for the foreseeable future, especially if he keeps spending fuel on these tier 4 structures. He wants to utilize that almost purely, I think, for the autocannon and the ability to produce further ogres. But it's expensive to keep building this thing when it keeps on being destroyed, especially when the B4 doesn't seem to have that much difficulty dealing with it, especially with IS-2 and KV-1 support. This squad of Volksgrenadiers has been absolutely devastating this game. With their MG34, they're 10 times more powerful than they would be without it. In fact, they're probably more dangerous than a squad of Obersoldaten, because they have 5 models and a Panzerschreck. Med 5 Volksgrenadier squad with an MG34 and a Panzerschreck might be one of the most terrifying Axis squads in the game. Shock troops making a play for the victory point on the right side, and we continue to see the Axis prioritize resources over victory points here on the left, which means that they're just going to keep on ticking if the shock troops can succeed in their engagement over here, which they will, and that will bring the Axis down to below 100 victory points. In fact, even the center is successfully being harassed by a squad of penal troops, which means the Axis really need to mobilize forces to the victory points and keep them under their control. They cannot continue to play this defensively around just this tiny scrap of territory here in the middle around these munitions. B4 fires once again, somewhere. Not sure where that was aimed. I missed it. Doesn't look like it did anything too significant though, since most Axis forces are alive and will. A Panther is deployed to the right side victory point to try and force a retreat from the shock troops over here. Meanwhile, Grenadiers are taking control of the munitions, but the Allies have the Axis triple capped. Grenade toss forces a retreat from 2 squads of Obersoldaten, and all of these Axis formations are being pressured off the battlefield. An anti-tank gun is set up in a pretty good location to screen away an IS-2 here on the left side, while the IS-2 here in the south is still awaiting repairs. Incendiary artillery being dropped on these anti-tank guns will force them to reposition or wipe them. There goes one. The other one gets clear of the flames easily enough. Meanwhile, Stern Pioneers are finally taking control of the victory point on the left side while shock troops work on the fuel. And the Grenadiers have moved from the munitions to the center VP. Before firing. Oh my god, that was terrifying. That could have been game-changing right there. I can't believe that just missed. Command Panther trying to pressure the shock troop squad into retreating, but it looks like they'll be able to get this fuel point under control before doing so. Stern Pioneers move into the capture circle, however, just in the nick of time. And it looks like the Allies are not going to take this fuel point. Or will they? Stern Pioneer squad falling dangerously low. And it will retreat. Allies do capture the fuel point before being pushed away by that Panther. The left side victory point's about to get taken by this squad of shock troops again. And a penal battalion is once again harassing the center VP. The Axis must do something about this. They have only 68 VPs remaining. They cannot continue to park their troops on the munitions. B4 shot connects beautifully, wiping out another Axis infantry squad, but this super squad of Volksgrenadiers will make it alive again. I'm actually curious how many kills it has. 29? Wow, is that it? I was expecting that number to be like 105 or something. I guess they have just been shooting at snipers, to be fair. Like, this squad has killed probably 5 snipers, so I guess that slightly not so impressive number is that small because shooting at snipers doesn't give you huge kill counts. Yet another tier 4 structure will be destroyed by a well-executed push by the Allies, utilizing satchel charges and AT gunfire and tanking flak cannon with IS-2s. Panthers against IS-2s, obviously the IS-2s have the advantage, but because both teammates are providing Panthers, there's slightly more of them, and every time an IS-2 gets picked off like this, the Axis lead, tank lead, grows. The B4 has yet to land a particularly impressive shot against these Panthers that could particularly destroy one, but there it is! I spoke too soon. B4 takes out the Vet 3 Command Panther. Somewhat equalizing the game yet again and continuing to make it difficult for the Axis to field enough forces to get the victory points under their control and keep them under their control, and the clock continues to tick against them. Only 50 points now remaining, and the Axis continue to prioritize resources over VPs. 45 minutes into the game, it is crucial to get those VPs under their control, and although munitions are critical for destroying the B4, it's not going to matter if the clock runs out.
Enemy forces capturing supply sector.
Stolen MG-42 will be forced to retreat by mass LMG Grenadiers here in the middle, and they're finally getting the center victory point under their control. We're going to see further harassment of the right side by AbsoluteMachine as he makes his way across the fuel and victory point. We're going to see an aggressive push by Volksgrenadiers here into the Axis, or the Allied base, and a Stuka dive bomb will destroy a third B4. Just before it can fire its final shot. Volksgrenadiers harassing a victory point here on the left side. Shock troops are trying to make their way down to screen, but the Panther, a fresh Command Panther in fact, is doing pretty heavy damage to the squad with Crush, and it will simply be forced to retreat before it can be moved to get rid of those Volksgrenadiers. Shock troops in the center taking control of the munitions once again. And a stolen AT gun is being positioned to screen these Panthers while Penal Battalion makes its way into the capture circle. 2 squads on the right side taking heavy damage from Grenadiers. The Grenadiers, however, are in red cover and quite clumped. A grenade could turn the engagement if he's not paying attention. Shock troops close into short range. The grenade does get dodged. The Allies will be forced to retreat, and victory point control will go to the Germans once again. The clock is currently stopped. We may see a few points bled once the center point gets taken. Doesn't look like it though. And IS-2 production just continues. There are currently 2 on the field, and because the B4 has successfully destroyed so many Panthers, they continue to have a pretty decent impact and continue to be able to apply pressure to the victory points. But now that there's a fresh Command Panther on the field, they will fall behind once again. The stolen AT gun brings the Command Panther down to a little below half health, and it will be forced to reposition. And it doesn't look like Showtime has another B4 yet, although he has just collected the 500 manpower he needs to produce a new one. And he needs to do so immediately if he's going to continue applying indirect fire pressure to his opponent. Panthers making a maneuver across the center leave themselves somewhat vulnerable to an IS-2 over here on the right side. This IS-2 has been targeted with coordinated fire, but the cooldown runs out, and the Panthers will now be engaging that IS-2's frontal armor. There are 2 squads of combat engineers available to repair, but 2 Panthers may prove a little bit too much for an IS-2 to take on alone, especially inside the aura of a Command Panther giving them combat bonuses. Meanwhile, the fight for the center continues, and Pioneers have taken control of the victory point, and the clock will tick against the Allies for now, but Penal Battalion is making its way across the right side to get that victory point under control, while the Allies take control of the left side here. And these Panthers are actually going to disengage because one of them has taken too much damage to continue engaging safely, and without both of them present for the engagement, it's unlikely that they'll be able to take an IS-2 on the way this one was just destroyed by a Command Panther and anti-tank gun in the center, supported by 2 Panzerschreck squads. And because yet another IS-2 has been destroyed, the Allies continue to waver in their ability to hold territory, and it all comes down to harassment. The left side victory point has fallen, the right side victory point has fallen, and the center victory point is being taken by a sniper and shock troop squad. And the Axis have to bring their forces to bear to stop that clock from ticking as soon as they can. Once again, 3 squads of grenadiers will be deployed to the right side to take control of that victory point. But they have to hold this territory. It's not enough to take it back. They have to prevent the Allies from harassing it. They need to throw defenses up or a bunker or something. Another B4 has been constructed and it's about to take its first shot. Incendiary artillery deployed towards the center. But it can't fill the entire capture circle, and these Volksgrenadiers will be able to get the point under control. B4 fires its first shot somewhere over here, but it's horribly off target and inflicts no casualties of any kind. And it will be a full minute before it can fire again, and that long cooldown very much means that it may not get to fire many more times before this game ends, as victory points are running out from both sides. The Axis still have the Allies still have a decent amount of time. Anytime they get triple cap, they still have 150 victory points to work with. But things are getting more and more urgent as all of their IS-2s are being cleaned off the field. There's only one remaining, and this one has no veterancy at all. AbsoluteMachine still has another 100 fuel to go before he can field another one, and his teammate clearly has no intention of making any tanks for the remainder of this game, as all of his manpower reserves are poured into more B4s, which is the most powerful thing that he can offer to the fight. Panzerschreck on the flank of this Command Panther. I don't think this engagement is being monitored by Neo, and we could see his Command Panther go down here. There it goes. Command Panther popped by a Panzerschreck on its flank. This Vet 3 squad is making its way towards the center of victory point to try and harass that, and since the Allies currently hold the left side and it's protected by a shock troop squad, the clock will begin ticking against the Axis again. B4 fires over here, but I don't think it connects with any priority Axis squads.
Our territory is falling into enemy hands.
Now the 2 Panthers are on the field and most IS-2s have been cleared off. DontReallyCare finds that a Broom Bear would be a more logical purchase so that he can clear out these shock troops. It gets some pretty good opening shots on that shock troop squad defending the center VP and forces a retreat. 3 squads of Grenadiers making their way from the right side VP towards the center will get the point back under their control. Pioneers are trying to get some repairs done on Panthers here in the center, and the shock troop squad with the stolen Panzerschreck will be forced to retreat. The IS-2 moves up to try and screen the Grenadiers away from the capture circle. They leave the circle not wanting to take too much damage and re-enter it once the IS-2 is successfully screened away by the Panthers.
Enemy forces are securing our territory.
B4 firing in this area once again will wipe a squad and narrowly brings the battle group headquarters to just a small sliver of health remaining. Once that is destroyed, the Axis will not have a forward staging position for their operations on the center VP and left side. That would probably not be a loss that they can afford, but they're currently running out of troops. There are no Stern Pioneers on the field anymore with which Neo can repair that, and DontReallyCare's Pioneers are currently tied up in repairing these tanks, which must defend the center victory point at all costs. AbsoluteMachine will be able to field a second IS-2 soon, and once it hits the field, it's going to be critical to execute flawlessly and get the final 21 points off the board. Recon run going over the center of the map to give Showtime an opportunity to fire his B4, but another Stuka dive bomb is going to come in and destroy the 4th B4 in a row. A few infantry standing next to it also get bled in the process, but Showtime does have the manpower for a 5th.
Enemy forces are capturing our supplies. We need to re-establish our supply lines.
IS-2 will be forced away from the center by sustained Panther fire. Panther takes minor damage from the IS-2's push, and despite decapturing the point, the Axis are going to get it back under control, but only 13 points currently remain for the Axis. They must stop the clock. They must do something. We do see Volksgrenadiers making their way towards the left side victory point, and they should be able to stop the clock if kept away from it, and Panzer Grenadiers will try to take the east, but I'm not sure if they have enough time here. 7 points now remain. Incendiary artillery being dropped on the Volksgrenadiers on the left, but it's slightly off target. One flame crit, but they do decap the point, and the clock is stopped with 5 victory points remaining. Panthers move up to apply pressure to the one remaining IS-2. Absolute Machine does not currently have the manpower to field his second one. Shock troops move up with their stolen Panzerschreck to attempt to screen away these two Panthers, and they will disengage. But trying to close into short range against massed Grenadiers is bleeding them hard. Meanwhile, on the left side, Sturm Pioneers will push away vetted conscripts trying to take control of the victory point. But this vetted shock troop squad will win an engagement against these Sturm Pioneers and set the clock ticking against the Axis again. They must do something about this engagement immediately. The MG-34 Volksgrenadier squad is making its way to the left side to try and get those shock troops out of the capture circle, and 2 Panthers are being deployed hastily over here to turn the engagement back in the Axis' favor. They must wipe this squad or force it to retreat, or they will almost certainly lose the game. Volksgrenadiers making their way into the capture circle to pause the progress of the capture. The Panthers here should be able to push or crush those shock troops, and it's critical that they do so. The top-mount machine guns are doing good damage and are sufficient to force the shock troop squad to retreat, and as a result the game will continue. We also see the right side victory point falling into Axis hands thanks to the efforts of these Panzer Grenadiers, and a Broom Bear will continue to screed against infantry pushes in the center. Suicidally trying to get past and get a victory point captured with only 5 points on the board. You can see that desperation is kicking in as the Allies try to do something, anything, to turn the tide of the game back in their favor. But Showtime has given up and has just left the game. Broom Bear is taking heavy damage from that IS-2. Absolute Machine is the only allied player still in this, trying to make something happen. Showtime didn't have the manpower for any more B4s and decided that the game was lost. A little bit premature if you ask me, since all they have to do is capture 2 victory points and hold them for a tiny amount of time, which is still well within the realm of possibility. Left side being captured simultaneously with the right side means that the clock will remain stopped, although it's ticking against the Axis very briefly and they lose 1 victory point. They do manage to capture the center and right side. The AI has begun deploying Su-85s. And Neo has actually deployed himself a Panzer II to try to deal with infantry that continue to push for the victory points. Panzer II engages the shock troops at range and forces them to retreat. Broom Bear and Panthers continue to defend in the center, and a new Tier 4 structure has been produced here to try to protect the Axis cutoff / fallback position. It doesn't look like the AI has any intention of producing new B4s. I don't believe that Absolute Machine is going to be able to win this game by himself, not from the current look of things. We will see some harassment attempts by the AI to take the right side. And a fresh IS-2 finally makes it onto the field. This one actually managed to make it to Vet 2 before the fresh one, before Absolute Machine had sufficient manpower to field this. Wow, and a Panther just got destroyed. The other one is down to just a sliver up here in the north. The Allies have only 100 points remaining, but they're making a sincere effort to defend VPs at all 3 locations. The AI's attempt to harass the right side will get shut down by the Panzer Grenadiers defending here. The fresh IS-2 makes its way straight for the center VP to try and push Axis infantry away from it. Recon run going out as well to provide vision, but there's no B4 or any form of indirect fire really to capitalize on that. This Vet-2 IS-2 is falling dangerously low to a Panzerschreck squad that's making its way across the left side, screening it away, and it will have to pull back for repairs. The IS-2 engaging in the center, assisted by incendiary artillery, should be able to push away most infantry, although it looks like the center VP will get capped by the Axis.
IS-2 heavy tanks are now available to crush the enemy.
Vetted conscripts are trying to make a push for the left side VP, but the Panzer II and Volksgrenadiers defending will be more than enough to push this harassment attempt away. An Su-76 has been deployed by the AI and is barraging the center VP blindly. But we will see a harassment attempt by this penal battalion, and it may succeed.
Incendiary artillery is now available. A mere 50 points remain before our defeat.
Vet-2 IS-2 is deployed to the left side victory point despite having almost no health remaining, and leaves itself extraordinarily vulnerable to a Panther push from the center, which is already on its way. 2 AT guns deployed to fire on those Panthers' rear armor as they make their way towards the left side, but it's just not going to matter. That IS-2 is almost certainly going to be destroyed by the Panthers and Panzerschrecks that are on their way to counter. It activated secure mode to try to capture the victory point, but it simply wasn't enough. The Su-76 over here will also get cleaned up easily enough, and all shock troops and other infantry that are desperately being deployed into the capture circle will get cleaned up. This allied push is doomed to fail from the start. The push for the center has succeeded, and a push for the right side may have worked out a little bit better, but either way, 2 Panthers were available in the center to screen against pushes for anywhere on the map that the Allies pushed. And it would be critical to destroy these Panthers for any push by the Allies to succeed, and since that didn't happen, it looks like we're seeing the end of the game. Allies could win this, although these 2 stolen AT guns threaten to clear out both Panthers! Both Panthers are destroyed! Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to matter. Here, an hour into the game, all 3 victory points are captured in favor of the Axis. The Allies have no way of capitalizing on the victory in that engagement, and this is the end. Good game. Axis wins. I wish Showtime had not given up, because I really feel like if he had stuck it out, this was anybody's game. The Axis had only 4 points left on the board, and as Absolute Machine showed us, it was still possible for them to win engagements. Regardless, it was a grueling match for both sides. And the Axis are the ones who emerged victorious.